Anastasia is a motion picture released in 1997 that stands as an alternate recounting of the narrative of Grand Duchess Anastasia Romanov, youngest daughter of the last Tsar of Russia under the House of Romanov, Nicholas II. Though often criticized on account of the myriad of historical inaccuracies woven throughout the plot of this adaptation, this film offers a stirring though rather fantasized depiction of Anastasia Romanov's adolescent years had she escaped the Bolshevik execution of her family in July of 1918. As all bodies of the Romanov family had not been discovered until 2007 when DNA analysis was implemented, many rumors surfaced surrounding the fate of the Grand Duchess. Had she been dealt the same horrific fate as that of her family? Or had she escaped amidst the bloodshed and terror that threatened to consume her, epitomizing the motif of the lost princess? Though the rumors were eventually dispelled, this film eloquently captures the faint hope that many an individual held amidst the uncertainty of her fate. The emotional and intellectual facets of this film become all the more compelling when viewed within the context of the hero's journey in the orphan hero archetype. The film opens with a glimpse into the glittering and enthralling special world of Anastasia's youth. The joy characteristic of these innocent childhood years is encapsulated in the shimmering ballroom, juxtaposing with the wickedness of Rasputin's spirit. Claiming that the Romanovs have betrayed his trust in the past, he curses the family, bringing about their utter demise. A daring escape is the only means of survival afforded to Anastasia and her grandmother. Dmitri, a character who will later boast the masks of many an archetype, leads the pair to a secret door, sacrificing his safety in the process. Despite these efforts, Anastasia is unable to retain the grasp of her grandmother's hand, thus enduring a hard fall that renders her an amnesiac. The audience is subsequently supplied with a sweeping view of St. Petersburg, the city that serves as Anastasia's ordinary world 10 years following that fateful night. Unbeknownst to her, rumors circulate throughout the decrepit city, imbuing hope in all those who hear it. An intimate view of Anastasia's ordinary world thus emerges as we become acquainted with the orphanage she is no longer permitted to attend as she has reached the age of 18. Pondering her options, a herald emerges in the form of an animal ally, Puka, who delivers the call to discover the truth of her past. A willing hero devoid of alternative options, Anastasia, or Anya as she calls herself, accepts the call residing within her heart to unlock the secret of her past. With Paris serving as her only clue, she fails to pass the test employed by the Threshold Guardian Ticketmaster. She is subsequently directed to inquire of Dmitri, a con man in search of a young woman resembling the lost Grand Duchess, as a means by which to obtain the coveted reward of 10 million rubles. Anya encounters Dmitri and his fellow con man and previous member of the royal court, Vlad, within the palace. They serve as heralds of the second call. She initially refuses the call, declaring that it would be altogether foolish to transform an amnesiac orphan into a Grand Duchess. Desperate to travel to Paris, she accepts the offer, crossing yet another threshold. This is followed by the test and trials phases of her journey. It is over the course of this particular stage that the shape-shifting archetype becomes fully manifested in both Anya and Dmitri. Christopher Vogler notes in The Writer's Journey that the psychological function of the shape-shifting archetype resides in the juxtaposition between the energies of the animus and anima. Essentially, characters project their preconceived notions concerning the opposite sex onto fellow characters, initiating a great deal of conflict in doing so. This becomes evident before Anya, Dmitri, and Vlad are forced to escape the train on account of faulty papers.
Certainly has a mind of her own. Yeah, I hate that woman.
Men are such babies.
Upon surviving the dangerous test inflicted by the Shadow Rasputin, Anya is presented with yet another call. This time, Vlad and Dmitri attempt to coax her into the special world of royalty. Anya's obstinate nature is unveiled in the scene as she fiercely refuses the call. It is only through a meeting with the mentor figure of Vlad that she hesitantly accepts the call, physically crossing yet another threshold in her journey. Vlad and Dmitri don the mask of the mentor archetype, instructing Anya in the royal practices and history of her past as they travel to Paris. On the journey to Paris, the shadow of Rasputin threatens to overtake her. Carl Jung asserts in his piece The Psychology of the Unconscious that dreams are symbolic in order that they cannot be understood, in order that the source of the dream remains hidden. This particular scene in the film stands as a literal manifestation of this principle as Rasputin evokes imagery and symbols of Anya's childhood so that his wicked intention remains concealed. Luring her into the fantasy world of dreams, Anya is greeted by relics of her own past. In Anya's hesitation to join her family in the dream, the curse overtakes the scene, altering it into a nightmare. Dmitri dons the mask of the hero, sacrificing his safety to save Anya from her death. Upon arriving in the city, the cohort is confronted by the threshold guardian of Sophie, the Dowager Empress's lady-in-waiting. Before she is permitted to converse with her long-lost grandmother, Anya will first have to convince Sophie that she is indeed Princess Anastasia. Impressed by her knowledge, Sophie presents Anya with a final question concerning her escape from the palace. Joseph Campbell notes in The Hero with a Thousand Faces that if a portion of that lost totality could be dredged up into the light of day, we should experience a marvelous expansion of our powers, a vivid renewal of life. Anya recollects a fragment of her past in this decisive moment, speaking of a young boy who led her through a hidden wall. Dmitri comes to the realization that Anya is indeed the Grand Duchess Anastasia, as he was the boy of which she spoke. Dmitri refuses the call to tell Anya the truth, as this would only solidify the class distinction which he views as an impediment to their romance. After exploring Paris in all its glory, Anya prepares for her meeting with the Dowager Empress. Dmitri enters the balcony at the ballet first to present Anya to her grandmother, who refuses to believe him on account of his past as a con man, a truth that Anya was unaware of. Despite Dmitri's pleas, Anya refuses to view him in any manner save that of a trickster, initiating a rift between her and Dmitri. Dmitri takes charge in order to initiate the next phase of the journey, taking the Dowager Empress without her consent to Anya's quarters. It is here that Campbell's perception of the hero's journey as a labor not of attainment but reattainment is manifested in its purest form. Imagery from Anya's once forgotten childhood emerges from the depths of her unconscious as she converses with her grandmother, uniting her with her past. Though it may appear that the narrative has come to a satisfying end, Anya is presented with two conflicting calls. She longs to be with Dmitri, yet the enticing special world of her reclaimed past strongly beckons her. Puka then leads Anya into the inmost cave in order to face her shadow in a final ordeal. The eerie yet hypnotic nature of Rasputin's calls draws Anya further into the maze of hedges. Having successfully lured her in, Rasputin makes his presence known. According to Vogler, the psychological function of the shadow archetype is to symbolize the hero's psychoses that threaten to overtake her. If Anya is unable to conquer Rasputin, who stands as a physical manifestation of her family's horrific fate, then the end of the Romanovs is near at hand. Dmitri arrives in an attempt to rescue Anya from the ordeal, yet she cannot repress the reality of her shadow any longer. She seizes the elixir of Rasputin's soul, which symbolizes the power residing within her to avenge the deaths of her beloved family. This power is not derived from her royal blood, but is a product of a resilient ego unique to the orphan Anya. Within Rasputin's clutches, Anya willingly sacrifices her life in order to redeem her past. Obliterating Rasputin's soul and robbing him of his evil powers, Anya triumphs over her ordeal, freed at last from her shadow. Love manifests itself as the reward as she and Dmitri reunite upon the completion of her ordeal. Yet the conflict of her calls must be resolved, as the path she chooses will direct the course of the remainder of her days. At the conclusion of the film, it is evident that Anya has accepted the call of her heart, unifying the facets of her ordinary world and special world in drawing upon the tenacity of Anya and the grace of Anastasia. Facing and confronting death and subduing the Romanov curse, she's been reborn as a hero imbued with the universal truth that her nature, rather than her past, defines her. Her identity is not exclusively tethered to Anya the orphan or Anastasia the Grand Duchess. The journey of discovering who she truly is has only just begun. The distinctiveness of the orphan hero archetype can only be understood upon analyzing the psychological function of the hero archetype itself. According to Vogler, the psychological function of the hero archetype is the solidification of the ego. The ego, the hero thinking she's separate from all these parts of herself, must incorporate them to become the self. An absence of parentally cultivated identity tends to define the first two acts of the orphan hero's journey. This propels him on a quest to answer the existential question, who am I? The orphan hero often neglects to account for the other facets of his or her ego, solely focused on the reality of a past defined by loss. As in the narrative of Anya, the ultimate boon obtained by the orphan hero transcends that of a reacquisition or establishment of family. Rather, the elixir of a unified ego is attained not in spite of the self-discovery necessitated by an obscured past, but because of it.